Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.
Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show. It's Tuesday the 6th of October. I'm Peter Martin, Alan Rough, Darren Jackson and Hugh McDonald are here with me. You can like, share and follow us on our Facebook. We'd be absolutely delighted if you could do that. And over and above that, if you hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, then you're with us. You'll get all the unique video content and, of course, live updates as well as the show Monday to Friday. So that's me with all the PR stuff. Now you have to tell me, are you happy with your club's dealings in the transfer window? Give us your thoughts on that. We'll be talking about the government with those discussions with the SPFL. Will they need to dig into their pockets to try and save some Scottish clubs from the abyss? And over and above that, are we looking at the Betfred Cup possibly being in danger over the next couple of months if clubs can't fulfil their fixtures and more get caught up with COVID and are unable to field a full-strength side? We'll also hear from Stephen Reeds, more from Kenny McLean. We'll hear from Jim Goodwin. We'll hear from the manager of the month, Neil Lennon, as well. He's been speaking today. So you'll get it all here on the programme. You'll also get no shortage of opinion as well. Let's start by the chat with the Scottish Government. Progress has been made. Whether it's enough to get a bailout from the government to save some clubs from going over the cliff financially, Roughie, only time will tell.
Yeah, I think there will be money out there, but I think we have to realise that we're not the only people who are struggling for cash. You know, there is everything. You know, there's the culture will want money. You know, I suppose travel will want money. You know, everybody will be wanting a piece of it. You know, it just depends what piece we get and how we distribute it. I don't think the Premier League clubs should be into any share of that. So I think it'll be the further down the chain. But it remains to see how much money it is and where it all goes, because everybody's pleading poverty. So we just have to sit here and wait and see how it goes.
Well, I have to say, Hugh, when I look at the transfer window, on average, I think on average in the Premiership in Scotland, you know, they were able to duck and dive through loan deals of signing players. You know, maybe on average everybody got 5 players in. Now, I understand the argument of you have to keep going to try and maintain your place in this league. But are the Premiership clubs in a strong position to get any of the money should it come through from the government?
I think the perception would be no, Peter, but I would add a caveat to that in that it's what the Premiership clubs are doing is all down to, you know, let's be honest, it's all down to a capitalist model. They want to invest in players to protect their standing, and it's what firms will be doing all over the economy. Will be trying to invest in things to keep them going, and they too will be seeking help from the government. I always think, you know, football's an easy mark from this, that, you know, that capitalism gets a really easy ride, except when it applies to football. But certainly the big problem for football, and certainly the big problem for the government, is the perception of it's that easy, cliched thing. Why give X amount of taxpayers' money to a club that's just paid £1 million out in wages? And that will be very difficult to defend, Peter.
Yeah, can you imagine most of the clubs down south trying to defend that when you consider some of the money they've been paid out? But Darren, no doubt about the whole situation that we are looking at the moment. I think, you know, Neil Doncaster, representing the SPFL, was trying to put across the point that as well as the need for a financial bailout from the government, there seems to be one rule for certain sports and one rule for certain groups of people, and a different rule applied to Scottish football. I think he's really trying to emphasise the need not only for money to help the lower league clubs, but let the fans in, because there's not that many of them, and they would be able to operate some kind of social distancing. That, I would presume, is his main plea.
Yeah, Peter, I've been thinking about a lot, obviously, and you think 300, 400, 500 people. It's not a lot, but that's what the lower clubs get on a match day. League One, a couple of clubs will probably get a bit more, and that keeps them. And then, as I think I said last week, that 500 maybe becomes 1,000, and then it becomes 2,000. So it's just trying to get them back in. And it's easy just to look at, you've got to look at every club and what they all lose, Peter. And it's easy to look at Celtic and Rangers, but I think I saw on the internet that Barcelona have lost £8 to £8 million because of COVID. So you can think what Celtic and Rangers have lost. People just think, oh well, Celtic and Rangers are okay, they've got money and they pay that kind of wages, so they're fine, but they're not. They're just like anybody else, obviously on a different scale, but they're losing more money than others. And it's a national sport. We're probably biased because we're football people. Everyone's got to be taken kind of care of, but it is a national sport, and we need to try and get fans back in as soon as possible so that the smaller clubs can really survive.
If there is such a thing as a moral responsibility, though, Hugh, clubs like Celtic and Rangers and other clubs within the Premiership in Scotland will look at the whole situation and like many other big businesses, if there is some kind of furlough scheme, they will take advantage of it legally. But morally, I think they would look and say, do we need to deny some clubs extra cash when we can sustain the hit? Is that fair comment?
Yeah, I think so, but it all depends. We don't know quite what the interior workings are at the top clubs at the moment, just how near the brink they are. I would think the way round it, rather than put it in clubs, Peter, if I was, in the Scottish government, I would say this is the fund, and this is, it'll be up to the fund will go to the SPFL with only one proviso. It has to be dispersed on certain things. I would say it has to be dispersed, for example, on testing to keep games going. It has to be dispersed on social distancing sort of provisions, much as that money that was given by the benefactor at the beginning of the season. So that the Scottish Government can be seen to be given money that seeks to further the advance of bringing football back and making it facilitating bringing football back, so there's no perception that money is going into playing wages or whatever. And then it would be up to the SPFL to say, right, we've got this money and this is what it's for. This is how we're going to disperse it, and have a really strong and robust discussion then that really focuses on giving it to the clubs that haven't got a bean, and those are at the bottom. That would be my way forward. That would be my first initial proposal.
Yeah, I mean, Roughie, when you think about it, I mean, some of our comments on Facebook and YouTube are suggesting, give it to the clubs who need it most. I think, well, that's very understandable when you see the most deprived in society that need to be helped out. Then we look at the same situation when it comes to clubs who are really feeling the pain of it. But if I had a kitty from the government, I think I would look to Championship, League One and League Two and say, okay, on a sliding scale, here is the money you're going to get. Is that fair comment on it, Hugh?
Yeah, I think so.
You can't have well, you're getting 10, but you're only getting 5. I think that becomes difficult.
Yeah, I would work from the bottom up on this, Peter. And as I said, I would work from the bottom up and say to them, this is to keep you going. This is to sustain you. We know that the costs of testing will be prohibitive. We know that you've had to put certain precautions physically inside grounds, around showers, around areas. This is what the money is for. The money is also for keeping the place open and going forward. Really, almost like basic stuff, Peter. But make it clear what the money's for. And again, I agree with you. Making it work from the bottom up. The first priority, and we know that football in a pandemic, we know in the greater world there's terrible things happening out there, and we know it's not a priority, nor should it be. But it is important. It is important to certain people. It is important to certain jobs. It is important to the welfare, I would think, of the country. So it has to be addressed. And I think the best way to address it is to facilitate clubs in their aim of getting even some supporters through the gate.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to many people on Facebook and YouTube who are putting across very important points, sensible points on it. Jimmy, who's clearly made his name up, says it's only a game. Government have got more important things to concentrate on. Go away the beggars. Well, Jimmy, on the basis that obviously you can't even put your right name up, I think the benefit that I have to mention about Scottish football, Roughie, is it contributes somewhere in the region of 200 million to the economy as well. It's not just football. It's lots of industry that is around football that will suffer as well. I mean, even something like the Betfred Cup. I mean, we've already lost the one of the tournaments already, the early cup tournament. What's it called? The Challenge Cup. It's coming into my head. Thanks for that. Is it the Challenge Cup? Yes, it's the Challenge Cup. The Challenge Cup. There's like an echo there. Thank you for that, guys. The Challenge Cup, but the Betfred Cup could go. Everybody says, "Oh well, just win the Betfred Cup." That's money, Roughie.
Yeah, it's also money, but it's also people's livelihood as well. I think we all touched on that. You know, it's not just the players on the park; they're getting paid, but at every club there's another 15 or 20 people who are salaried to do something about the place, and they're the ones that are losing their jobs. So it's a real difficult one. You know, I don't see. I was listening to Nicola Sturgeon there. I don't see people coming into the grounds. You know, we can't even have anybody coming to visit in his house, in your house. So what chance have you got 2,000 people mingling outside a football stadium? Yeah, once they get in the stadium, I don't have a problem with that. I've been to Hearts. I've seen the stringent things you've got to go through, and it's thorough. It's so thorough. But you're going to have a lot of people travelling to games and then hanging about outside and whatever. So the way things are, the restrictions are just now, I just can't see it. I really can't.
By the way, Hugh, Jimmy says that's his real name. I didn't read out his second name because I thought to myself, surely that can't be, your name can't be Jimmy Riddle. I mean, it just can't. It just can't. It just can't. That can't be your name. But undoubtedly, he'll be part of the snowflake generation who will make a complaint about the fact his name's Jimmy Riddle. But nevertheless, his point on football being a shower of beggars, beggars belief, to be perfectly honest with you, because Scottish football does contribute to the economy, Hugh, and this is the point that I'm trying to make, and that's why I'm so incensed with some people who disregard it all.
Yeah, but there's got to be a sense of proportion here. I mean, we're all football daft. All of us are football daft. We love it. It's been really part of our lives. But we both appreciate the importance and we appreciate the insignificance of it. If you're talking about, should money go to hospitals and to health, of course, nobody's arguing about that, Jimmy or anybody else. But if you're talking about sustaining industries, and this is the debate we're in, Peter, we're talking about sustaining industries. Football has a right as an industry to be sustained in every way, as a theatre does, as a hospitality, as a restaurant, as any other business. It has the same. It has the same need and right to be helped if help is there. So it is a nuanced debate. It is a debate where we know it's not the most important thing in the world, but it is an important thing, Peter. As you say, people's livelihoods depend on this game, far away from a football stadium, and also people as well, for the general gaiety, as we say, of the nation. It plays a huge part in the culture of the nation as well. I mean, it's really important, I believe, to have, football at least. I mean, I'm so surprised, actually, Peter, that it's still running. I mean, I know we're just watching it on streams and on the television, but I think, sport as an industry, what a job they've done. Whether it be the French Open tennis or rugby matches or football matches at wherever in grounds across the country. What a job they've done in actually getting it on, and I think we should congratulate them for that.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm watching the French Open at the moment, but again, no fans. It's a hard watch, and as we know, we're watching football even when it's great games, and still you want to hear the Manchester United players getting pelters when the sixth goal goes in. You want to hear the Aston Villa fans, and of course, up here, I was up at McDermott Park watching the game, Celtic against St Johnstone. I mean, that alone could have been a nervy game with players not able to handle the pressure as it got to the 90th minute with 0-0, but it was still silent. And eventually Celtic broke them down. And of course, you only have to look back to last week to the Rangers fans enjoying Galatasaray. That would have been full to the gunnels had we got fans in. I'm going to give a mention to Jazz Sweeney, who says, Peter, can you give a shout out to David Bammer and his cousin John O'Hagan? David is in Mexico getting stem cells treatment and has MND. I know John will be listening to the show over there. If you can, wish David all the best. And from everyone on the Football Show, every now and then, because there are so many messages coming in, sometimes I miss some nice messages of goodwill and support for people who have fallen on hard times. So David out there, all the best to you, and let's hope the treatment and everything goes successfully. Fingers crossed, because in these hard times we need wee bits of good news to cheer us up. I can tell you that. We've got Darren, we've got Hugh, we've got Roughie here with us. We're going to talk about the transfer. We're going to hear from Neil Lennon. We'll hear from Jim Goodwin as well. Remember Jim saying Kyle McManus is not for sale. We'll get his thoughts on that. Stephen Reid, and also Kenny McLean talking to us from inside the Scotland camp as well. So to each and every one of you who are posting messages, thank you very much for your contribution to it all, good and bad. I try and read out as many as possible, apart from the ones who tell me to go and take a flying to myself. I just try and crash on with the show and see if we can override them, Ruffy. Anyway, apart from anything else, Robbo mentioned something. I was wondering to get our old pal Darren. Robbo was talking about the fact with the COVID. It's just one wee line that I thought was very interesting. He said, it's been really unfair to players. They're being treated like cattle. This is players having to go in, play games, can't have a shower, get on the bus, you're stinking, and head back home. I can understand where he's coming from at times, Robbo, but I just think it's something that a hardship that everybody has to put up with at the moment.
I think you're right, Peter. Robbo's great, and he'll give his opinion, which is brilliant, and great to listen to the wee man. But I think it's a hard one. I think it's a small thing in what's happening just now, and it's not nice. I'm going to the game with their gear on, which is fine, but after the game, you're hoping that your players have worked hard enough to build up a good sweat. Their strips soaking wet. Yes, they can maybe take a change and all that, but driving home soaking wet, it's not really that great for your health as well. So I can see where he's coming from, but I don't know if he'll get too much backing about this, just with the arguing about the boys getting a shower after the game. I think there is a little bit more important things.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I've got a lot of time for him. You know what he's like. He's one of our mates, but I can understand where he's coming from. There's a whole situation now where footballers have to work under difficult circumstances just to get the games on. I mean, I'm told that one of the Forfar players has COVID or is tested positive for COVID. Now, whether that affects tonight's game against Dundee, only time will tell. We wait to see how that story is going to develop. I'm going to mention this little message from Isabel Gardner. She said, football keeps a lot of folk sane. I am 72 years of age. I love all football. I can't go to the games any longer and just hope that it gets back to fans being in soon. We bit disappointed that the Hearts game is on Premier tonight. More money for the loyal season ticket holders to dole out if they want to watch it. Come on, the Jambos. Isabel, I sympathise with you. If you wanted to watch all sorts of football right across the globe, realistically, there's all sorts of subscriptions you have to make now to try and catch your love of football. Anyway, transfer deadline day. I mentioned the amount of people who had signed, on average, I'm looking at all the list here, and I don't think there's a club that's signed anything less than 6 or 7 players. So give us your thoughts. Who do you think has had the best transfer window or signed some of the best players? If it's your club and you think you've made a couple of crucial signings that you're happy with, let us know who they are and we'll read them out and get the thoughts of the guys on that. Earlier today, Neil Lennon was Manager of the Month, and I've got an interesting topic that, Roughie, I'm going to put to you. But Neil Lennon was Manager of the Month wins over Ross County, St Mirren, Livingston and Hibs in the month of September. There he is, happy enough in the rolling hills around Lennoxtown. Well happy with it. But I'll tell you who he wasn't well happy with. He wasn't happy with Charlie Nicholas, who in the Daily Express, and Charlie, for any people of a certain vintage will know Charlie as a player was an absolute genius. But as a pundit, I think he's really upset Neil Lennon. Now, I have no problem with Charlie as a pundit. If he's noised somebody up in a paper and everybody gets angry, the boss comes down, gives Charlie a pat in the back and says, well done, you've got everybody talking about the Express, and they might read it and buy the paper. But Neil Lennon was quick to get back at him for comments he made saying that Celtic were cheap and that transfer window wasn't great for them.
And Messi and Ronaldo, Charlie still would have found fault with it. You know, he's been just a negative banging the drum about the club for years. You know, we switch off to it. I'm not aware of it. You know, I woke up this morning absolutely delighted with the squad of players that we've got, and certainly with the Laxalt signing. And I think we've come out of the window very, very strong, and we've got great depth. So, look, people can throw stones at the club. There's no merit, there's no foundation, there's no substance to it. We've kept all our best players. We've kept Ed Ward. We've kept Ayer. We've kept Christie's. We've kept the McGregors. All these players here are big assets for the club. And that's been a difficult thing to do. When you consider the financial situation that a lot of clubs are in. We've also added international quality. You know, players who have bedded in straight away. You know, Barkas is doing a great job. Duffy's been exceptionally good. You know, Turnbull, a great young talent who will flourish here. You know, I could go on and on about the players we're saying, and I'm thrilled to get Laxalt over the line as well. So Charlie doesn't speak for me. He doesn't think for me. And to be honest with you, it doesn't resonate one bit here.
There you go. That's the punch back. You think Charlie's got a point, or is he out of order, Roughie?
I think he's got a point if he thinks that Celtic should be a Champions League side. If he's insisting that the money they bring in, they should be competing in Champions League. If that's the case, they should be buying better players. There's no doubt about that, because they're not going to get back into the Champions League unless you've got better players. If Celtic's target is 10 in a row and having a good run in Europe, that's fine. I think they've got players enough to do that in both occasions. So I think it's the level of what your expectations are, or what you think the expectations should be. I think Celtic have now resigned themselves to being a Europa Cup side, and the quest for 10 in a row is the target. And I think they've done enough, you know, to possibly see that through. If it isn't enough, we obviously know there'll be repercussions down the line. But as it stands at the moment, if that's the two targets, then I don't think they could have done any more.
Hugh, you're probably better placed than most on this because, and I certainly know it myself from writing a newspaper column, if you're going to write a newspaper column or you're going to write a column every week, you know, my attitude was to it from the people who taught me is you better have something decent to say.
Absolutely. If you write a column and everybody agrees with it, right? Everybody agrees with it. It should immediately go into the bin because it's not worth reading. You've not said anything new or fresh or provocative. You've just hammered out cliches and banalities, which is usually, as my readers will know, is my speciality. But to be serious, you've got, as a columnist, you've got to write a column, and you've got to write things that people don't agree. I really disagree with Charlie's comments, and I disagree with Roughie as well. I think that, you know, Roughie's saying that they should have brought in players, you know, for the Champions League. Ferencvaros were the team that put Celtic out of the Champions League. What was at Celtic? And Ferencvaros are the team that's going on to qualify for the Champions League. What was at Celtic, Peter, is more than enough in cash terms and economic terms to beat Ferencvaros. It's more than enough to beat Cluj's, and it's more than enough to beat Copenhagen's. So the problem at Celtic is not spending money to get into the Champions League. There's a different question once they're in the Champions League. We know that because they've taken some right sore ones in the Champions League. But the problem is not, not qualifying for the Champions League is not a financial thing. It's not that they've not spent enough money. If you look, if you now went to Ferencvaros manager and said to him, whispered in his ear, see over the financial break now, you know, we're going to get you a £6 million goalkeeper, an £8 million centre forward. We've got a £16 million player we're going to get in loan for Southampton. We've got a £7 million centre half. We've just bought a boy for the local club down the road for £3 million who's going to be a better player. And we're going to get a guy in for AC Milan on loan. I mean, come on. That's enough to get you into the Champions League. Getting into the Champions League, to me, was, you know, there's other, we can talk all day, we can do a programme on that, but that's not about not buying players.
I think you make some great points, Hugh. I'm totally in your camp. I'm not in Roughie's camp, but hey ho, that's the nature of it. Where are you going with this, Dan?
Listen, Hugh's 100% right. I mean, their signings. If you had asked Celtic fans at the start of the window, fans are greedy. They want signings. If you had said, what do you want? We want Edouard still to be there when the window closes. He's still there. And they've added a great centre-half. They've added a goalkeeper, which hasn't really been tested yet, so you don't really know. They've added David Turnbull, who I've worked with, who is going to be an exceptional player. They've added a left-back, which they definitely needed. We don't know what he's going to be like, but he's played at a World Cup. He's played for AC Milan. I know all players that play at World Cups aren't great, but hopefully he is. And I think the squad, when you look at the depth they've got in the squad, that Julian's not been playing. Beaton could play centre-half. Beaton could play midfield. You've got Brown, you've got Rodgick, you've got Christie, you've got Turnbull, you've got McGregor, you've got El Younousi, you've got Klamala and Griffiths that came on at the weekend to change things. Now, the jury's still out in Klamala, whether he's going to be... But Griffiths does what he does, Peter. I've banged on about it, and I'm one of his biggest fans. Yes, I looked after him. But he scores goals. You're not going to get anybody better than a fit Lee Griffiths, and he's come out and said he's let himself down, he's let the club down, and he has. Now, he can make it better, but he made it better at the weekend. So I don't know where else you could have probably strengthened. And Peter, I think I've said to you before, Charlie was one of my heroes. Charlie and Glenn Oddle were my heroes and a wonderful player, but I think he's kind of wrong in what he said there. And I think they've got a strong enough squad that the winners this year get into the Champions League, and money's been tight. But I think the biggest thing, and I said at the start, the biggest thing was keeping Edouard.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. Neil Lennon mentioned that he's got Diego Laxalt in on the last day there. This is what the Celtic manager makes of him.
I thought he had an outstanding World Cup, and they're playing in a very good Uruguayan team, you know, with great players, and you know, he looked very comfortable in that company. So we've been tracking him for a long time. We tried to get him in this time last year. Couldn't do it. But I've been a big admirer of his for a long time. So to get that deal over the line is fantastic.
Yeah, he's got him in. The only criticism I would make overall, and again, we all have our opinion on it, the only criticism I would make, and Dougie Liddell picks up on it, some of those players didn't sign until after the Champions League qualifier. My criticism of Celtic's strategy is sometimes it's always after the horse is bolted. If you look back over Champions League games where they needed a player in at a certain time to fill a gaping hole that was abundantly obvious, and they didn't do it, and they suffered the consequences of it. Would Shane Duffy have made a huge difference? Who knows? You could go back. I could go back 9-10 years of significant defeats in Champions League group qualifiers, where Celtic fans were crying out, saying, "Look, you know, anybody can see this is the type of player they needed," and they waited and waited until the last minute, and then came a cropper. But I think Hugh makes a very good point on this. Ferencvaros, Celtic had more than enough to beat them, and the fact that they didn't is all down to the players who took to the field, and the manager carries the can for it, nowhere else. Is it easier for Celtic pundits to criticise Celtic than Rangers players as pundits to criticise Rangers? That's a point that's been made on here. That's something you can deliberate as well, I'm sure. Footballers always like to, do footballers really have a go? Is it a situation where some have a go at their ex-club with greater ease, or some are afraid to have a go at their ex-club because they don't want to break ranks. There's another point. Thanks for everybody on YouTube and Facebook who are making those points. As far as the transfer window is concerned, let's just give you a little tweak on the type of player that was signed for the clubs on that final day. Our reporter Gabriel Antoniazzi has been having a look at it.
After the longest transfer window we've seen for many years, the market shut last night, so let's take a look at the deadline day deals. Celtic announced the signing of Uruguay international Diego Luxaut just hours before the deadline on a year-long loan from AC Milan, who the Hoops face in the Europa League. Luxaut claimed his heart now belongs to Celtic, with the 27-year-old coming in to give Greg Taylor competition at left wing-back. Rangers got their central midfielder in the shape of Bongani Zungu, who will join on loan from French side Amiens. The South African has the option to make the move permanent next summer, and new boss Steven Gerrard believes the 27-year-old can take his side to the next level. Hibernian capped off an impressive window with the signing of St Mirren captain, midfielder Kyle McGuinness. His 5-year deal at Easter Road was much to the reluctance of the Paisley club. But the Buddies have finally backed manager Jim Goodwin as they completed the loan signings of 2 young defenders, Daniel Finlayson and Brandon Mason, from Rangers and Coventry City respectively. A familiar face makes the return up north as Reading forward Mark McNulty joined Dundee United on loan for the season, having had previous spells at Livingston and Hibs. Aberdeen re-signed left-back Greg Lee on a short-term contract after his exit from NAC Breda, and he could fit right in at the back after the exit of Scott McKenna. St Johnstone finally got a striker in the shape of Israeli Guy Melamed, who joins on a 1-year contract, but he will need to self-isolate for 2 weeks. And in Dingwall, Ross County signed midfielder Charlie Lankin on a season-long loan from Birmingham City, whilst they released Josh Mullen, who's rejoined former side Livingston after 2 years up north. So plenty of new faces, but perhaps the ability of the old firm to keep a hold of their want-away strikers is the biggest story of this seemingly never-ending window.
Yeah, so Rangers finally get Bongani Zungu in, and there was talk that there was, I laughed at this one, there was talk of a last-minute loan deal for Alfredo Morelos. This is coming from Torino. I mean, if you're in the Rangers boardroom, Roughie, and you hear that Torino want to take him on loan, you must be laughing your head off thinking, I don't know, what's Italian for away in Bile your head?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as you've seen, a lot of the transfers now are loans with the choice to buy. That seems to be the new thing now. You know that you sort of cover yourself by taking the player, and then at the end, if you don't like him, you just send him back. If you do like him, you've obviously worked out a price. So no, I couldn't see that one happening at all. And it's amazing that 4 weeks ago, Edouard and Morales were the top of the game. They were top of their game, and now none of them are showing the form that they were showing, and they're still here. You know, it just shows you, unless you're top of your game, people won't pay big bucks for you.
Well, apparently, and I can only say this has not been in any way confirmed at the moment, Hugh, but apparently Alfredo Morelos is only going to leave the country once Roughie learns to pronounce his name correctly. So he could be here. He could be here for quite a long time, Hugh. I don't know. I mean, he could get a testimonial here in Scotland. It's unbelievable, honestly. Anyway, apart from the valid points that Roughie makes on Alfredo Morelos, another name I was going to get your thoughts on was wild speculation at the moment that Steven Gerrard might be able to even convince after the window's closed Jack Wilshere. Now, Jack Wilshere, forgive me for this, he's on 100 grand a week. Steven Gerrard might have to dip into his own pocket if that one was coming up.
Well, I mean, Wilshere would be that'd be an incredible move. I think the interesting thing about Wilshere is the perception that he's injured and he can't play. And he put out a statement last night, Peter, to say very strongly, the problem here was the manager and the club didn't want to play me. I could play, which is fair enough. I mean, it's Davy Moyes is right not to pick players, especially those at 100 grand a week that you think he can get off the wage bill. But I wouldn't rule anything out with Wilshere. I mean, I think it's all just speculation, as the managers say at the moment. But I mean, Wilshere will want to play. I mean, Wilshere will believe he's 28. Wilshere will believe that he's an international class footballer. That all he needs is a place to go and flourish. and he can move back up the ladder. So he'll have motivation. I think the most interesting thing in the transfer window in Scotland in many ways, and Darren alluded to earlier on, it's like the hound of the Baskervilles, the dog that didn't bark. What didn't happen in the transfer window? What didn't happen is that Edouard and Morelos did not go. And I think it's going to be really interesting over this season now, at least to January when it'll all start up again, is how both of them react to this, Peter. Because we've been saying for weeks that, it was saying for months that Morelos wasn't at it. He just wasn't up to scratch after the Dubai break. And then we'd been saying that Edouard had been, to use the Scottish vernacular, mince since the start of the season. And then all the fans come in and say, oh, you're just trying to sell a Celtic player. You're trying to sell a Rangers player. The only way I would be trying to sell Celtic Rangers players if I'm getting a cut of it. If I was the agent. The fact of the matter is, and the managers have now come out and said it. I mean, Neil Lennon's quote, I think, after St Johnstone, Pierre, was very interesting. He said, now the transfer window is past, we hope, that Edouard becomes fully focused. So that would suggest that Neil Lennon was thinking along the same lines as us.
Listen, Hugh, this is why I love this programme, because we get an immediate reaction on Facebook and YouTube. Some people go ballistic, some people go over the top, some people try and help you out on the programme. And Stevie, who is on Facebook, says, I've tried to work this out for you, obviously. Now, apologies to all Italian people if I'm offending you here, because this might not be the perfect translation. My mates who are Italians in Edinburgh, who own all the restaurants, might be coming to pick a fight with me. But apparently it's via contrascite la testa, which is a way in bile your head, Darren. So, maybe Stevie's helping me out, or maybe he's doing the classic, when you translate something.
Molto bene.
Yeah, that's about it. That's it. You're with me on this one, to be perfectly honest with you. But thanks, Stevie. If it's something, it means something different, then I apologise. Stevie has stuck me right in there, to be honest with you. Listen, that's a great point that he makes, though, Darren. Keeping Morelos and keeping Edouard in this country, two players that, the window's closed. Let's see if they can go and score goals on a regular basis, get their heads down and contribute.
Peter, well, I've said it already. If you ask both Celtic fans, they would love that. Morelos went off the rails last year in terms of not scoring goals, having scored 29 before Christmas, and he scores goals. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And if you ask the Rangers fans, would rather he stayed or got the money for him? You can't guarantee. It doesn't matter how much money you spend, Peter. You cannot guarantee that people will come in and score goals just because they think, Scottish football's not that good and they're playing the two biggest clubs. It just doesn't work like that. So he has scored goals. So they'll be over the moon that he's stayed. Probably not over the moon with his form, but over the moon that he stayed. And will he settle down now and just get on with it? And it's the same with Edouard. And Peter, I do think that Edouard has that in his game, that he sometimes just doesn't look interested, and if it's not his day, it's just, I'll just do enough, and I'll maybe not just jog here and jog there, because when he's on his game, he's unplayable. And I do think it's who he plays up front with as well. And you can't, I don't mean that he thinks because he's playing up front with El Younousi is a 10. And Edouard likes to come off the game, Peter, and be a 10. So there's no one up front for him to play with. That's why I think it was last year, it was that good when he had Griffiths there, that he would just play along the line so he could go and wander and get involved. And I think that might, listen, I don't know him, so I'm not saying that that's right, but just looking at games, that there's nowhere for him to go into. And you see, as soon as he gets the ball, the St Johnstone players, there was 2 and 3 men round them. But for me, that's a compliment. That's what happens with good players.
Well, as you know, I'm not here to agree or disagree with anybody on a regular basis. I would say to you, I'm not going to make excuses for him. I've been highly critical of him, and I've been watching him the last 3 or 4 games, and I have to be honest with you, Darren, I think he's saying every game, I'm not at it today. I must be, he must be saying the things that you're saying. I just don't fancy it today. I don't think I'll run back. I don't think I'll get my act together, because he's been ranked rotten. And the manager, again, I taking a bit of criticism for it, but the manager hooked him up at McDermott Park because he also thought he was rank rotten. And he said to me after the game, he's rank rotten.
Peter,
I said,
by the way,
how many gears do you think you've got to go through? I says, I think he's in second gear. And he said, he's got a lot more gears to go through than that.
Peter, and I think that's credit to Lenny, that when you look at the big players, you're thinking, like, can he take him off? He's their biggest player, he's their biggest threat. But he's had the bottle to go and take him off. You're not doing well enough. We'll go and throw the other two strikers on. And I remember Jackie used to always have a saying, Peter, that people will turn around and say, like, it's just no my day today. And Jackie obviously played at Celtic for 10 years, and he knows every day's your day. And players, you've got to look at that because it goes so quick, and you've got to make sure every day's your day, because that result at Perth could be important at this stage of the season.
Yeah, if Edouard hadn't come off, Darren, it'd still been 0-0 and they'd still be playing right now. Michael Climby says Edouard and Morelos have both been ranked recently. Amazing how much criticism Morelos received at the end of last season for going off the rails, yet Edouard has been just as bad recently and not received anywhere near as much criticism. Michael, you haven't been listening to this show. We can only tell you what our eyes see, and when they're ranked rotten, we will tell you they're ranked rotten. Anyway, apart from that, Matthew Roberts says, come on, Peter, stop banging on about Celtic. Well, would you believe we've banged on about Rangers and Celtic? I'm going to bang on about St Mirren because I was highly critical of them. Hugh, it looked as if they'd thrown their manager under a bus. I thought he was under pressure. I had a sneaky feeling they might sack him at the weekend there. 6 games with no wins. Suddenly you think, would they do it? Listen, not because I think Jim Goodwin should be sacked. I think they should back him. But you know, certain clubs, and St Mirren come under this category, sometimes pull the trigger and you think, really?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I think Jim Goodwin is an excellent manager, and the reason for that is simply what he did at Alloa. I think what he did at Alloa was, was astonishing given the resources there. And I think he's had a satisfactory, more than satisfactory beginning at St Mirren, apart from this season, of course, which the last 6 matches he hasn't won. And if you don't win, you get criticism. It doesn't matter if you're 10 minutes away from beating Aberdeen at Petrodu. The bottom line is you lose 2-1. I think the interesting thing is of the obvious tensions at St Mirren. I mean, Jim Goodwin came out and as close as said, the board had told him one thing and another thing happened and he wasn't informed of that. Now that eschews great tensions. If you're losing 6 games in a row and your best player is sold, and I think he is their best player, is sold from underneath you or from above you, that's a problem. And then I think the from a journalist, if you're looking for tensions, you say, like, St Mirren put out a statement later, and they basically threw Kyle McGuinness under the bus as well, basically saying Kyle McGuinness wanted to leave, very stridently wanted to leave, so we had to let him go. So that speaks of the tensions that they're feeling as well. They're obviously coming under some pressure from the fans about selling it at such a time of the season as well. So it's hugely interesting, quite what's going on there. Obviously, a club in real turmoil. I still think, by the way, Peter, I don't know if the lads agree with me, if I'm looking at the St Mirren squad and all that, McGuinness going's a huge blow, don't get me wrong. I still think they've got more than enough to stay up.
Yeah, well, that'll be interesting to see. Here's what Jim Goodwin had to make of Kyle McGuinness's transfer to Hibs.
Kyle would have, knuckled down here had he stayed, and he would have given 100% to the club. I've got no doubt of that. But at the same time, he did, he did say he wouldn't be disappointed if it did happen as well. So, it was one of those, a difficult situation for Kyle McGuinness.
Yeah, wouldn't be disappointed if it happened, but if he'd have stayed, he'd have knuckled down. So read from that what you will, but we wait to see if St Mirren can back up Hughes' assessment that they can get away from relegation. Let's hope they stick with Jim Goodwin. I think he's got a lot to offer that club. Scotland against Israel, Roughie. We're certainly looking forward to it, and I know that you have been the spy in the camp, because I don't know what you did in the dressing rooms, but now six Israeli players are out with COVID. So the magic potion that you've been putting in seems to be working. Just another 4 or 5 key players to go, Roughie, and I think we might win this one. But I'm being slightly facetious, but they are missing 6 key players, and they've drafted in 5 uncapped players, Roughie. So we should be in a good place, surely.
Yeah, as I said yesterday, I'm pretty positive about this game now. Obviously, if we had lost 6 players that they've lost, we'd be panicking. So I think they are panicking as well. But we saw what the Czechs did with their guys who come in. But I still think we're at home. We don't have any call-offs as yet. We're pretty strong, but I think we're probably stronger than what we were in the last game. We're at home. Let's go for it. And I know this team aren't an easy mugs, but I still think, for me, this is a 2-0 win at least, with the players that we've got. And I'm not going to be turned either way in this one. I don't even think the draw is a good result for us. We need to win this game and play Norway or Serbia. So I'm positive right until the end here.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's win or bust, to be honest with you. Here's what Stephen Reid, the assistant, makes of it.
I think there's bits that we've analysed and looked at, things that we can do better, things that we did well. So we've obviously debriefing and analysing that performance. I think there's going to be a tiny part that may play a part going into the next game, but it's going to be a completely different game. It's a completely different scenario. I think everyone knows what's at stake going into the game on Thursday.
So that's what Stephen makes of it all. On YouTube, Andy McLaughlin, just like many people, eventually when they look for a little loophole, Andy McLaughlin says, Peter Martin, COVID is no laughing matter, mate. No, Andy, I'm not suggesting for a minute it is a laughing matter. I am suggesting them losing 6 players might do us a helping hand in a jocular fashion. But Andy, you know what they say in the 21st century. If you don't like to laugh, then this isn't the show for you. Are you confident, Hugh?
Well, it's very difficult to be confident about Scotland given the past history. but and there's a big but. I think we've got a decent team, Peter. I think we should beat Israel. I really do. I think this. I look at that side, and I know there's great caveats about what we've got at centre half. But I think Lyndon Dykes has gone a long way to changing the attitude about what we've got up front. Not just because he scored that goal or anything like that, but because he's provided a presence. He's aggressive. He can hold the ball up. And I think having a centre forward that can hold the ball up really plays to our strength, because then it brings in the strongest part of our team, which is the midfield, where we've got really strong players in midfield. We talk about it all the time. So yes, I think I'm confident, and I'm confident as I can be that Scotland will beat Israel on Thursday night. Are
you, Darren Jackson?
Yes, I think we've got a really strong squad. I think Hugh's right. That Lyndon Dykes has definitely had something to us, that we can get the ball up to him, hold the ball up. I mean, and he's not just a big boy. He's not just you would say a lumpy wood. He's mobile. He's quick. He can go in behind if the ball's in behind. He'll chase things. He'll upset defenders. But the one thing is, he'll hold the ball up. It lets your defenders get up, and it lets your as Hugh said, it lets your best part of your team get closer to him. And it gets Andy Robertson down one side, probably Stephen O'Donnell, because I think Palmer's injured. Stephen O'Donnell down the other side, and be positive. Let's go at them, because I think we've got a team that can cause them major problems.
Gary McGurran says Scotland will take a 1-0. Alison says Scotland will win 3-0. Niall says 3-1. He's confident. And also Stevie says he thinks Scotland will win against Israel. And lots of people, I think, sharing that optimism. But I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, over the course of this, who's going to play? Who'll play up front with Dykes? We've all had our say on this one, and who's going to play in the midfield. Interestingly enough, we've got a plethora of quality midfielders. Kenny McLean certainly gave an honest assessment of how he feels he's been playing as a Scotland international.
Average, to be honest. I know there's so much more to come from me. Even going back to the Czech Republic game, I set myself standards, and I always demand more from myself. And right now, going back to the Czech Republic game, I know I can be better.
I like his honesty, Roughie. I mean, more power to him.
Yeah, I think you like to see that. I would go as far as to say it's below average, because I think he's a right good player. I think he's a player that could be a big player for us if he gets back to the kind of form that we know that he can produce. He can score goals. He's good round about the 18-yard box, but he hasn't done it. And I would throw, McGinn scored some goals in the other games, but I would put McGinn in that category as well. I think he needs to up his game with Scotland as well. I think we need to see more of him, more that we know what he can do. So it's a big night, and I like the manager coming out and saying this is a must-win game, because it is a must-win game. Because if we don't win this game, we're back to square one again, and we don't want to be there.
Interestingly enough, Tony Coleman says international football is dying, horrible, unwatchable, and a burden to our clubs. Now, Tony's not isolated in that thought process, because I know a lot of fans who support their clubs now have no time for international football. I do. I love it. I loved going all across Europe and to further afield to follow Scotland when I was a kid and into my teenage years as well. It was just a great trip away with your mates, Hugh McDonald. But this game, and correct me if I'm wrong, are we just obsessed with club football over the weekend that it's kind of a flat build-up to it? I'm not getting any great sense of anticipation for this one.
Well, there's 2 points to be made. First of all, with somebody who has the real Roughie, you deliver them back to us at our studios in Bellshill, Peter. This new Roughie coming out with the baseball bat, hammering over, champion Charlie Nicholas, battering John McGinn over the head with a baseball bat, sticking the boot into Kenny McLean's Hom Oz. It's not the cuddly Roughie that we know and love, is it? I mean, I don't know what's going on there. I really don't.
I'll tell you what's going on. I want a wee trip abroad.
Yes, I'll tell you what's going on. You might not have noticed this, Hugh, but what really is going on is usually Roughie waits till about 10:02 and he has a wee drink of his gin. But he had a wee clink at 16:24. He'd gone early for the gin, and that's when the baseball bat came out. I heard him having a wee drink, and I thought, he's gone for the gin early. Here we go.
But on your point about international football, I agree with you. I mean, I come from a generation, Peter, when it was everything. Like one of the biggest games of the whole season, including cup finals, including league deciders. The game of the season that everybody would be looking forward to, and sometimes for 2 years, would be Scotland v England, particularly when it was at Wembley. People would save up for 2 years. To go down to Wembley and watch that. And Scotland as ever. I mean, one of my great football memories is 1973, watching Big Joe scoring against Czechoslovakia, as they then were, and us qualifying for the World Cup. So, and it's not like that now. There's no way you can argue against it, Peter. There's a whole generational change where club football has taken over the world. I mean, it's you will see on social media, you'll talk to some football supporters who will say quite bluntly, let's get this international break out the way and get back to the real stuff. I don't share that. Well, I think it's a huge problem for national sides at the moment, not just Scotland.
Well, yeah, but I think for us, in a way, it's almost, apart from the fact that there's not as much enthusiasm as Hugh rightly points out, Darren. I think what compounds our misery is the fact that we're not very good for the last 20 years.
Well, Peter, I think that's a huge problem. If you ask the fans in Roughie's time, if you ask the fans in my time, which you know, the excitement was incredible because we were qualifying. It's a negativity that we're not good now. We're not going to qualify. So there's a huge negativity around the Scotland squad. And listen, only Stevie Clarke and the players can put that to bed. And I honestly pray, I hope they do, because I was asked the other day there about it, and it was a reporter saying, and I said, well, it's amazing that 22 years down the line you're still calling me for a piece on Scotland to qualify. And it is. I mean, I'm the same as you, as you've said, going and supporting your country. Peter, I'm desperate to go to a tournament with my son, whoever, with the boys, to go and support. So, but I just think there is, because we're not qualifying, everyone's not really getting behind the country, because we're not poor. We've not qualified and we've let ourselves down at times. But if it was to happen, the Scotland fans would be back, because the Scotland fans are amazing at tournaments. They love tournaments. So that would come back, no doubt.
The last time I've been excited at a Scotland game, I think was quite unusual, Roughie. The reason why I always remember it is because I was cuddling you and cuddling Kenny Miller in the traditional Celtic end of Hampden, which even Kenny raised a smile at, because it was Lee Griffiths scoring 2 goals for Scotland against England, and we were all jumping about, and it was just a great feeling just to be part of a whole group, a whole country, just celebrating when the second goal went in. It's been a long time since I've heard it. In fact, the last time I heard a noise like that at Hampden Park was when I think the number 6 scored against Italy. We don't mention his name nowadays on the programme just for legal reasons. No, I'm only kidding you. When Barry scored against Italy, noise incredible. But before that, we had it on a regular basis, Roughie.
Yeah, I think so. I think Darren touched on it. It's people want to be part of a successful team. They want to go along to see their team being favourites and running over the top of other countries, and that's when you get a momentum going. We've never had that momentum at all, so you would expect that a lot of the supporters who are going to drift away. But as you said, Scotland-England games are what it's all about. I played in 8 Scotland-England games, and they're just unbelievable. And it's the supporters that make it. It's the supporters that make the whole game. They buy into it. Obviously, the rivalry with England, but we need to get back there. We need to get back and have a team that can not compete with maybe England or anything like that, but compete at a certain level that we can start progressing. Because I think once we get to one final, we might just be able to build on that.
Yes, just out of curiosity, how many of the 8 games did you lose?
4.
4. Okay.
In fact, I had the better record down at Wembley than what I did at Hampden. Okay.
Stuart Ramsey says, Peter, I've been through the ringer watching Scotland, but I'll always be there, especially living in England. And John Coots says, Darren, do you remember the 2 guys on the train after Scotland-England game totally bluttered?
Yes, I do actually, yeah. I do, yeah.
There's how to narrow it down to 2 fans on a train totally bluttered is magnificent.
I do actually, yeah.
Them. Yeah, and lots of people actually posting some great memories of great times when they followed Scotland. Good times and bad times as well. In fact, when you look back at some of your memories, Joe Jordan certainly springs to mind. For me, one of my favourite players of all time, John Robertson, scoring a penalty against England. It's absolutely fantastic as well. And there's Ronnie Porter, who's just summed it up perfectly. The greatest Scotland game I was at, he said, was in 1967, Scotland-England. Scotland won 3-2, and Slim Jim Baxter played keepy uppy on the wing. And Ronnie, nobody, I think, will top that on this programme if we manage to chat from now until doomsday for the Scotland games. That one certainly was special. We've had some lows as well, but we'll dedicate that programme for later on this year when Adair chipped a goalkeeper at his near post. It never usually happens for goalkeepers, but on that occasion, the Adair special programme that we will be talking about comes later in the year. Anyway, apart from that, just a couple of things before we go, lads. Listen, you'll never believe it. It's Betfred Cup matches tonight, Hugh. Which one are you going to? Is it East Fife, I ask you? Could it be Hearts Inverness? Forfar's game with Dundee is off due to the positive COVID test. That is incredible. I've just had that news come through there. Could it be Stirling Albion or Broth, Dumbarton, Dunfermline, Albion Rovers, Ayr United, Anne and Hamilton, Morton against Queen of the South, Edinburgh City, Livingston, or well, it's not going to be Falkirk Kilmarnock because they've forfeited the game, Hugh. So, which one is it you're going to as a reporter?
Well, I'll not be going anywhere, which is the problem for me is that there's restricted media access now, Peter. So there's no place at the inn for an old ailing football. But see, when you say that, it's funny you should say that and say, "Oh, you'll be relieved." Actually, the depths of my obsession is, even though we're talking about earlier on, it was when Darren was talking about 300 going to games, etc., etc. Do you know something? I'd be one of those 300. I'm desperate.
Yeah.
I'm really desperate to go and see a game of live football, and it's amazing because I was just thinking. Roughie was talking about being at Tynecastle for watching Thistle, and I was just thinking to myself, I'd really love to go to any game at the moment. And you watch it on the telly, Peter. You talk about the events that's going on the television at the moment. I was watching Man City v Leeds United, where Man City pummeled Leeds United for 20 minutes. It could have been 2 or 3. Then Leeds get into the game, and it goes to 1 each. And then you're thinking to yourself, Leeds could go and win this. And you imagine to yourself, can you imagine what Ellen Road would have sounded like that night? Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Instead of the echoes of the ball slapping against the hoardings, the place would be going crazy. And it just shows you what we're missing.
Hugh, I'll back you up there. I was down, obviously a scout for Blackpool, and over COVID we've just been watching games on videos and the computer and all that. And I went down at the weekend, and unfortunately we lost 3-2. But just being in the stadium again, getting that buzz back. Okay, there wasn't many people there. There was just the staff and all that. But just being in the stadium again just gave me such a buzz.
It goes back, Darren, as well. It goes back as well to that thing we talked about earlier, where we know that football, we're not saying that football is the most important thing in the world. We know in COVID, there's hugely significant things, but we can't underplay, what some of our viewers have been saying about the importance to mental health, the importance to, and what it means to us, like what it means to actually get up on a Saturday morning and go to a game. It's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony Holton says Morton are streaming their game tonight. I mean, and that's where we're at. We have to look at streams. If I was going to a game tonight, Roughie, I think it's fairly obvious which one I'd be going to. It'd be Tynecastle, Hearts against Inverness, Cally Thistle. That looks like the game of the night. There might be others who think it's elsewhere, but that looks as if it could have been an absolute cracker. It's not to be. There's lots of people missing out on these great games. Anyway, apart from anything else, we'll talk about it. We'll give you opinion on it. What are you going to say there, Roughie? You can have the last word.
I'd just like to wish Hearts all the best tonight, and obviously for the rest of the season.
Yeah, well, apparently, Roughie, if Hearts defeat Inverness tonight, they play Partick Thistle over a 19-game session to see who gets to the Betfred Cup final. So that's fantastic. Home and away, just non-stop, of course, because you two are best buddies. Anyway, apart from anything else, don't forget to like, share and follow us. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Have a wee look at some of our commercials going about at the moment. It'll tell you all you need to do is subscribe to us. We've been firing out as many T-shirts as we possibly can. As a big thank you to quite a lot of regulars who watch the programme, people from across the globe as well. Andy Wilson, I think, is in Australia, and we're sending one out to him, as well as people in the US of A and Canada too. So there's lots of people watching the programme near and far. We are absolutely delighted to all the football fans who are joining our football family in PLZ Soccer. The figures are absolutely fantastic for the show. To Darren, to Hugh, to Roughie, thank you for contributing today. From myself, Peter Martin, thanks to you for watching.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed.